Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Is Nathan Gorman facing Kevin Johnson a wise move? Or is it a bad piece of matchmaking? I think it's a bad piece of matchmaking, and there's several reasons for that. I think it's a bit of a lose-lose here for Gorman on several fronts, whereas for Frank Warren, he gains out of this, as potentially does Daniel Dubois. So I'll go through this and a few thoughts on the fight in general and a few of the statements that the fighters are making. So buckle in. Let's go. So Gorman, he was originally meant to be facing Fabio Maldonado on the 23rd of March at the Morningside Arena in Leicester. He is one of the main feature fights on the card. And that is part of the reason that I think this fight is still going ahead. That Gorman hasn't been pulled from the card, because if he's pulled from the card, then that really takes away one of the sort of marquee names from that bill. But having Johnson coming in at such short notice, is this a good thing? I don't think so. Because Gorman, you know, he's been training for another guy, and it's not so much that I think Gorman can't beat Johnson, because I think it's clear he will, and it will be a wide points decision. Kevin Johnson has devolved into basically a walking heavy bag of sorts later in his career. Doesn't do enough, doesn't throw enough punches now, and pretty much shells up, you know, as soon as he tastes a couple of punches. But he is very crafty and he can survive. And the Maldonado fight, that would have actually been potentially a similar kind of fight to the Johnson fight, except Maldonado probably would have let his hands go a lot more. There would have been a bit more action in the fight. Kevin Johnson is a very low volume guy now, looking to pick his spots, and it's very rare when he lets his hands go for more than a punch or two at a time. So Gorman, not only does he only have a few days to prepare for Johnson, this one's likely going the distance. And he's just come off a fight against Razvan Kajanu back in, what was it, December. And in that fight, he was also taking the distance. And this fight could end up being something very similar, where he looks good early on, fast hands, good combinations, looking sharp. But as the fight goes on, it could just end up devolving into, I don't want to say a snooze fest, but that's effectively what the Kajanu fight ended up being. It kind of ended up being a bit samey, and there wasn't a lot of great action. Kajanu wasn't really doing much or letting his hands go. Kajanu probably let his hands go more in that Daniel Dubois fight in the 2 rounds before he was knocked out than he did for basically the whole Gorman fight, where he just sort of shelled up and just was really defensive and negative. And I think we will see something similar here in this fight against Kevin Johnson, where the later it goes, Gorman will start to tire, and then the questions about the gas tank will come out again. And because he's unlikely to be able to stop Kevin Johnson with any variety or combination of punches, there will be questions again about the power. But it's not exclusively that Nathan Gorman can't hurt Kevin Johnson. Not many have been able to. Anthony Joshua is the only one to knock him out legitimately. He has been stopped one other time, and that was against Peter Milas on cuts. But against Daniel Dubois, who was certainly more noted for his power than Gorman, Dubois was unable to really land anything significant or drop him. And against Filip Hrgović, another rising prospect, who also is noted for having more power than Nathan Gorman, he was able to sort of rock and sort of drop Johnson one time. But beyond that, it was really Johnson going through the motions, surviving. So not only are we likely to have basically a repeat performance of the Kajanu fight, when I think it's highly probable that we will, that's not going to be great for his profile in many ways. Because if you step back and look at the sort of situation now with Gorman's career, they're talking about a Daniel Dubois fight at some point later this year. Having him in unexciting fights where it does nothing for his profile, where he may end up looking decidedly average at the back end of the fight as he starts to tire and he can't really sort of get Johnson out of there. So that's not going to be great to build his profile or build any potential hype towards a Daniel Dubois fight. So not only will that sort of get people talking about Gorman again, or hardcore fans, I should say, about, you know, Does he actually have the power to sort of trouble the guys at the top end of the division? And likely, I think there will be questions again about the gas tank. But then again, maybe he will try to conserve himself a bit more. But that will become a bit obvious if he does that, because he will be a bit more low volume and we will know what he's deliberately trying to do. Because, you know, guarantee this one is going the distance. The only thing it really sort of does is draw a bit of a comparison of, you know, they both fought Johnson, who did it better? But if it's both taken the distance and they both didn't look great, because remember, Daniel Dubois fought Kevin Johnson in 2018 and, you know, he put on a decent enough performance. You know, there was a definite lack of punch variation. It became a bit monotonous. Every round kind of looked the same, wasn't mixing it up or making adjustments. But it was an okay win. And what value is there to be gained between comparing decision wins? I mean, Gorman may get some style points for some of the earlier rounds, but it may end up just looking much of a muchness, and if it sort of peters out to a snooze fest, that does nothing for Nathan Gorman. Anyway, I'll get to the press release that's come out from Frank Warren, from his site, frankwarren.com. Nathan Gorman will now take on the venerable American Kevin Kingpin Johnson at the Morningside Arena, blah, blah, blah. Heavyweight contender Gorman, well, I would say he's a prospect / fringe contender rather than fully minted contender. Gorman has unfortunately been victim of late withdrawals of opponents this week, while the veteran Johnson was also due to have his first fight of the year but suffered an opponent withdrawal. Actually, yeah, Johnson a week or so ago was meant to have a fight, but it was TBA the day before the fight, so obviously it didn't go ahead. But withdrawals this week, so that implies more than one. And so I'm going to cut in here because Maldonado pulling out. But who else is the other name? Because there's one guy on social media that has been crying from the rooftops for that fight. He was contacted, and here we go to his Instagram page, Christopher Lovejoy, the 17-0 fighter who's been down in Tijuana, basically in club fights for the entirety of his career in the past 2 years. So he's posted a series of Instagram posts, and here's one here that he's calling all bluffs, don't believe none of these dudes who they say they are, 5 days notice for 100 bands, so 100,000 US, I'm showing up. And then he proceeded, not just here, so there's all these Gorman posts that he's talking about what he's doing. He had a whole bunch of different tests, you know, like scans and eye tests, brain tests, all manner of testing, drug testing. And yeah, so posting all this with him and Gorman here. You've got, I'm the new king of the UK. And then all of a sudden it was apparently off. And he went on his own YouTube channel posting that Nathan Gorman didn't want any smoke and they backed out and all this sort of stuff. And for me, I would have actually here's Nathan Gorman. It's shit. I ain't got no other way to describe it. It ain't no spin. It's no better happened too often. But job to do, no point bitching or moaning. Trust them, closest to me and me trainers. Just got to do it and move on. Be the last time. Well, it's boxing, so you can never say never. So yeah, Lovejoy sort of saying here, I found out it wasn't actually the fighter. He actually wanted the fight. His team didn't want no smoke. And to be honest, I actually would have preferred Lovejoy over Kevin Johnson just for the novelty factor. One, he was an unbeaten fighter. Two, he's a shameless self-promoter that's been calling out anyone and everyone on social media. And you might remember this is the guy who out of nowhere got ranked by the WBA last year. And now he's back, a new post you can sort of see over here, trolling Joe Joyce. He's been trying to get a fight with Joyce. And his manager, Sam Jones, Joyce's manager, actually did a poll, and almost 70% said, yeah, you let Joyce fight him. But yeah, he's been trolling Joyce for some time, but he looked like he was going to get this fight from what he was saying. And then all of a sudden it emerges that it is Kevin Johnson. And on Twitter, so this is obviously from yesterday. This was before something was announced, but Gorman didn't actually go public with this, neither had Frank Warren. A day before, I think it's pretty clear what it was in reference to. Boxing man, the nonsense that comes with it literally does your head in. And up the top here, he says, just got to go to work and get the job done. Nothing else to be said, really. So the Lovejoy fight, for me at least, that would have been interesting and entertaining, because there's almost zero footage of Lovejoy, especially fight footage, because he's been fighting in Tijuana. I would have preferred to have seen that fight just to know, what does this guy actually have, you know, in his arsenal? He keeps talking a big game. He was ready and willing to travel to the UK, but didn't get the fight in the end. So I'm going to go past some of this here. So some of these comments here. Gorman says, probably the most durable heavyweight in the world is old Kingpin, isn't he? He seems to have been in with everyone, so it only seems right that I should fight him too, because it will be another experience and another style. I know I've been training for a different style and only have had 4 or 5 days to prepare for it, but it will be another box ticked. Then further down, it will be very hard with him because he can be very defensive and only 2 people have stopped him. It will probably be a hard night's work, but only time will tell, and I've just got to stick to my boxing and do the business. I need to get the win first and foremost and come out unscathed and healthy. Of course, that is the aim, to better the outcome of Daniel. Obviously, I'm not going in there to go the distance. I want to get him out of there, but I've just got to let my boxing do the talking. And I think he will end up letting his boxing do the talking for the entirety of that fight. I just cannot see him stopping Kevin Johnson. I can see it being, you know, something like, what is it, a 10-rounder this one? It might be, you know, all 10 rounds. He might sweep it all. I could totally see that, because Kevin Johnson is a husk now. He isn't showing anything except durability. He is the definition of a walking heavy bag these days, and the credit you can get from a Kevin Johnson fight, it's rapidly declining. I said after the Daniel Dubois fight, I don't want to ever see this guy again, because he showed nothing, he did nothing, and in the process he made Dubois look, you know, it's at the point now where he's making guys who he's fighting look bad because they can't really do too much to him, because he's just completely in a shell for the whole fight. I think Gorman does have a tough night's work, and I don't think this is a good piece of matchmaking at such short notice. The comparison with Dubois is probably not going to mean much, because they'll both go the distance. And does this actually help build towards a Dubois and Gorman fight? Not really. I mean, who's talking about this for a stadium fight at the end of the year? No one except Frank Warren. Zero buzz for that right now, and this fight does nothing to help. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.